Today I want to share with you why waiting for the right moment to do things is actually costing you dearly when it comes to not only the results you're looking for in your life, but also just in terms of how you show up as a person and how you're going to continuously get results in your life moving forward. Hey everybody, it's Fahad here from the TFF Fitness Podcast, and basically in today's podcast episode I want to discuss the concept of waiting for the right time. I hear it a lot of times where people are thinking about making a decision to improve the quality of their life through working on their health and fitness, and then for whatever reason, and I'll share what the reason really is in a moment, they'll tell me that now isn't the right time. They've so and so things are happening in their life at the time. They've got work commitments, they've got family commitments. And look, a lot of this is true. We often have busy lives. We often have a lot of things going on in our lives. But why is waiting for the right time the wrong thing to do? There's a saying, if you wait for all the lights to turn green, you'll never set off on your journey because the lights will never always be green, or rarely always be green. And you can't anticipate what's going to come in the future. Now, why do we say that we want to wait for the right time? Well, actually, it's a protective mechanism, much like procrastination is a protective mechanism. We don't procrastinate because we're lazy. We procrastinate because we have a perceived threat in front of us, and procrastination is our brain's way of keeping us safe. And this is all from our ancient days as hunter-gatherers, where we had to be very clear on what was going on and very predictable, have predictable things in our lives to ensure our safety. And if that pattern of predictability was given any threat, or that we saw that there was something outside of our control that affected that pattern of predictability, it would be deemed as unsafe and potentially life-threatening. And we have been programmed and we have been designed to fear that, or at least stay away from those things. And that's kind of what's happening now, except this time it's not saber-toothed tigers or big, nasty animals chasing after us. Right now, it's just the fear of the unknown and the fear of failure, the fear of changing your routine, changing your habits. And that can manifest itself not only as procrastination, but finding excuses to not start in the first place. And that's pretty much why you might have said in the past, I need to think about it, or I need to wait for the right time before I start. The reality of the situation is there's never a real right time to start. Yes, there are circumstances in your life that will dictate whether things are a good time for you or not. For example, you could just be coming out of a family bereavement. That might not be the right time to get started with something, and you might genuinely need to wait a little bit longer. But if it isn't something that's serious, if it isn't something that you feel is genuinely holding you back, then waiting for the right time could just be that protective mechanism kicking in and that procrastination mechanism kicking in. So let's discuss this. Let's talk about why it's going to hold you back from achieving results in the future. First and foremost, I'm always going to go back on the topic of self-identity. And I need to express that information to you again in this video as well, or in this podcast. Everything that you do will be determined by how you see yourself as a person. In other words, your self-identity. So if your self-identity is small and your goals are outside of your scope of your threshold of tolerance, or your threshold of comfort, or that comfort zone, because of your identity, then going for those bigger goals seems scary, especially if it's not something you identify as achieving or having in your life right now. So for example, it's very common for people to say, I don't see myself as somebody that likes fitness or nutrition. I see myself as somebody that loves food. I see myself as lazy. I hate exercise. And these are all of these stories we tell ourselves that basically feed into the self-identity of somebody that doesn't like exercise or like nutrition or eating nutritious food. Well, that's not really the case. What that is, that's just a justification for the results you're getting in your life, and the results you're getting in your life are dictated by the identity you have in the first place, because your identity dictates your actions, and your actions yield your results. So a lot of what you think that's holding you back is actually your self-identity. And if you really want to achieve massive changes in your life, whether that's achieving health and fitness goals, financial goals, relationship goals, physical goals, emotional goals, mental goals, whatever the goals are in your life that are eluding you, then chances are what's actually holding you back isn't the knowledge, it isn't the know-how, it's actually the self-identity that you hold so close and dear to you that's holding you back from achieving your goals. In fact, we can argue that we live in a time now that we have all the information we need. We aren't starved of information. We have Google, we have AI. You can get all the information at your fingertips now, all the how-tos, all the guides. So it's not a case of not having the knowledge. You know, there's that old saying, knowledge is power. Well, I don't believe that knowledge is power. Knowledge is important, but the application of knowledge is important. And it's the application of the knowledge that actually is the power. So we need to start applying what we know. And what's holding us back from applying what we know is also that self-identity. So now you sort of like have a more basic understanding of why it's important to work on your self-identity. We can discuss the concept of waiting for the right time to get started. So let's just take an example of 3 people. Let's say if one person waited for the right time to get started and never did. One person waited for the right time to get started and got started. And one person didn't bother waiting for the right time and got started anyway. Well, we all know what's going to happen to person 1. They waited for the right time to get started and never got started. They'll never achieve their goals. But what's going to happen to them is they'll constantly confirm to their self-identity that they're somebody that doesn't get started. They're somebody that talks about things and they are procrastinators, they are lazy, they don't get started. These things will basically then manifest themselves in the results they're getting in their life, and they'll never really ever get started, and it'll compound. And that compound effect is so important to understand. You know, when you compound your ideas and compound your thoughts and compound the way you talk about yourself, that's massive. That will then strengthen, that will then solidify, and that will then technically, it will just make your identity and that self-identity even stronger, making it even harder to overcome and change in the future. So that's really important to understand, that if you make decisions in your life, it's going to feed into that self-identity. And the decision to not get started for whatever reason will feed into your self-identity of somebody that doesn't get started. And going off on a sort of tangent here, if you know your self-esteem and your confidence and things like that are important to you, I once heard a really good quote by a big coach, and he said, nothing injects weakness more in a human being than telling yourself you're going to do something and you don't do it. And telling yourself you need to do something, or you're going to start something, but not starting it, it weakens your self-confidence, it erodes at your self-esteem, and it's just going to make it even harder and harder to get started in the future. Number 2 person is the person that waits to get started, but eventually gets started. And that's great. But here's the problem. They've now created a self-identity of somebody that does take action, but only when the time is right. And guess what happens in life? Life happens, shit happens, you know, curveballs are always thrown. So if you're somebody that just waits for the time to be perfect or the things to be right and you to get started, then when life hits you a curveball, or when things get difficult or unpredictable things happen, you're going to break down. You're not going to be able to cope with it, and you're going to then fall back on your self-identity of somebody that only does something when the timing is right, and you're going to stop. And the reality of that situation is you'll probably never hit your goals. Now, here's what I've seen as well. Okay, just to give you a caveat on that. I have seen people that have waited for the time to be absolutely right before they start on their goals, and they achieve phenomenal results in 12 weeks. But then after 12 weeks, when life starts to happen, when you know curveballs are thrown, when shit happens, or when they take the foot off their accelerator, it's very often I see people not only revert back to type, but get worse than where they started from, or end up worse than where they started from. And I think that is because, again, you've got that self-identity of somebody that only does something when the time is right. And when the time is right, that's great, but time is not always going to be right. Then you've got person number 3. Person number 3 is somebody that takes action in spite of everything around them. And they might start off slow, right? They might not go all in. They might not go balls to the wall, 100% effort. But they get started. And they get 1% better every day. And that 1% better every day, again, compounds. And by the end of the year, they're 38 times better than where they started from. So imagine improving your life. Imagine 38xing your results in life. Whether that's in your fitness, in your physique, in your health, in your energy, or in your finances, or in your business, or in your career, or in your relationship. 38xing your results is huge. And a 38x result comes from that 1% daily compounding over the course of a year. So you don't have to even take massive action. You simply just need to get started. And by taking action, you're going to move forward slowly, baby. But you're going to get to where you want to get to. You know, there's that saying, the person who's walking the race is going to overlap the person sitting on the couch. So even if you're going at a walking pace, you're still going to overlap that person that's still waiting about the right time to get started and thinking about it. Okay, so it's huge, and again, it feeds into that self-identity. You start to feed into your self-identity as somebody that takes action. You're an action taker now, right? Regardless of how slow you're going, you're somebody that says you want something and you start to take action. And again, that starts to feed into your mindset, that starts feeding into your identity. It starts compounding, and as that compounds, you're going to become more and more confident in your skills. You're going to become more and more confident in your ability to do things. You are then also going to feed into that self-esteem. Your self-esteem is going to go up. You're going to feel better about yourself. You're going to become more habitual at the things you need to do. And then guess what happens? You know, something happens in life. Life throws you a curveball, because guess what? It will. And life throws you a curveball, but guess what? You've created habits, you've created routines, you've created this mindset, you've created this self-identity of somebody that takes action in spite of everything that's going on in life. You can now deal with it. Yeah, you will now deal with what's been thrown at you and stay on track. It might knock you off momentarily, but it's not going to knock you off completely like person B, who started because the time was right, got some results, but fell off completely when the curveball hit him or her, because they weren't prepared for that eventuality. They weren't prepared for that effect or that event to happen, and they didn't know how to react because their mindset was not able to react. And the biggest thing, like I keep saying in my talks or in my podcasts or in any content that I create, is it is all fundamentally your mindset. It's how you see yourself. It's your self-identity. It's who you see yourself as a person, how you show up as a person. And I noticed one thing. I noticed that the people that show up and work hard in the gym and don't make excuses inside the gym are the same people that don't make excuses outside of the gym as well. There is that saying, you know, how you show up is how you do everything. I mean, how you do anything is how you do everything. I have seen exceptions to that. Don't get me wrong. I have seen people that have got phenomenal results in one area of their life, but they completely crumble in other areas of their life, especially when it comes to physical fitness, health and well-being, especially when it comes to training hard in the gym. But for most cases, how you show up and how you do anything is generally how you do anything. You know, you've got a way of doing things. You've got a character. You've got self-esteem and an identity that drives you forward or holds you backwards. And going back to, you know, how you talk to yourself, that's huge. So if you talk to yourself and say you're somebody that will start later, I need to think about it, I'll wait for the time is right. Again, you're just telling yourself that story in your head that you don't get started. And then you start to justify that. Yeah, so humans have this really crazy thing. They start to justify their behavior, because if the behavior might not seem right, we have to justify it, because if we don't justify it, we'll look foolish. So we start to justify it. Now's not the right time, I'm busy, or I'm just feeling a little bit demotivated right now, or I'm lazy, or I don't like to exercise, or I don't like to eat healthy foods. Again, that feeds into your persona, that feeds into your mindset, and that feeds into your subconscious mind. I mean, we've all heard of the placebo effect, right? Where you can give somebody sugar pills and they start to feel better. There have been countless studies done on these kind of effects. There was a study that was done on, I think it was on hotel maids, where they realized that these hotel maids were doing all this activity throughout the day. They're carrying hoovers everywhere, cleaning. They were burning a lot of calories. And when they were asked after their shift, do they exercise? A lot of them said no. And then half of these maids were then told and shown that their activity level was equivalent to that of doing physical exercise. The ones that were told that their activity was constituted as physical activity and exercise, they started to lose weight. The ones that didn't, that still carried on doing the activity, but weren't made aware that their activity was almost the same as doing physical exercise, they carried on gaining weight or carried on maintaining the weight they had. So what we get from that study is that our psychology dictates the results we get. So if we believe something, or if we've been given the information that what we do is beneficial to us, it's going to manifest itself as the results we get. Now, so we know about the placebo effect, but there's another phenomenon called the nocebo effect. And the nocebo effect is the opposite of the placebo. So if we believe negative about ourselves, believe negatively, that too will have an effect. So if we believe that we're never going to be able to achieve something, then that's going to feed into our psychology, that's going to feed into our self-esteem, our identity, and we will then not take the action that we need to take in order to get going because we don't believe it's going to happen, because we have that negative belief, that nocebo. So again, if you start to feed into yourself and start talking to yourself about why things aren't the right way for you, or the right time for you, why you can't achieve something, you're only going to start to feed into yourself that it's not something that's possible for you. And once you don't believe it and you don't have that possibility, or that realm of possibility, it's nigh on impossible for you to achieve your goals, because you're not going to believe it, you're not going to put the action in. Now, we don't do things, we don't invent inventions if we don't believe that there's a possibility for that invention to take place or that invention to work. If we think that it's possible, then the invention will be created. I can't remember the exact story, but I think it was Henry Ford that wanted to create a particular type of car, and the engineers were all like, this is impossible, and he just kept saying it's possible, just make it work, make it happen, keep designing, keep going back to the drawing board. And all these engineers that said it was impossible, because of Henry Ford's belief that it was possible and his persistence to keep going at it, they eventually created this engine. If it was left to the negative thought process or the negative talk of it's not possible, we'd never have that engine, and cars we have now would never develop the way they did. So it's always down to somebody that believes in themselves and somebody that believes that it's possible. And you've got to start believing that your goals are possible. And you've got to start believing that it doesn't matter what's happening right now. There's something you can do. You don't have to wait for the time is right to do something, to get started in some direction. You don't have to go all in from day one. But if you put one step forward, to keep putting one step forward, eventually that will compound into 100 steps forward, into 1,000 steps forward. And eventually, not only will you achieve the results you've been hoping for, you'll become the kind of person that gets results in other areas and maintains those results. Because again, if I go back to what I was saying earlier on, if you just only achieve goals when the time is right, you'll only ever have the goals for a short period of time when that time is opportune. Because like I said, it's very, very common for life to throw curveballs, for shit to happen. We all know Sod's law and Murphy's law. If it will go wrong, if it can go wrong, it will go wrong. And you can see that in your life. There's always times where things seem like everything's going great for you, and then boom, something bad happens, or something negative happens, or life happens, or circumstance happens, or the economy changes, or the government changes something, or this happens, or that happens. And then, what do you do then? Well, the best in the world will learn to adapt, whether that's in business or in fitness or in health or whatever. But if you don't learn to adapt because you're always waiting for the right time, you'll never get that skill. So not only are you going to get a skill, not only are you going to get the results you're looking for by just taking action, regardless of whether it's the right time or not, you're going to develop a skill set, a mental muscle of, we'll make it work no matter what. And if you've got that mental muscle of making it work no matter what life throws at you, you'll make it work. And that's winning. That's how you move forward in life. That's how you win in life. So hopefully this video has brought you some value. And if there's any questions you have, feel free to leave it in the comments. Feel free to send this video to somebody that you know. If this is in video format, if it's in podcast format, send it as a podcast. Share the link to somebody you feel needs to hear this, because they always wait for the right time and never get started. And if there are any other sort of videos or content you'd like me to create, then again, drop me a message or drop me a comment below. If you'd like to work with myself or my team on your health and fitness and your mindset, then feel free to click the link below in the description, or leave me a comment or drop us a DM, and we'll schedule a free call with you to see, where you're at, how we can help you, if we can genuinely help you. And if we can genuinely help you, we'll discuss how we can move forward in a coach-client relationship and help you get amazing results. Okay, so I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Thank you, by the way, for listening to this whole thing. If you're here for the full 20 odd minutes, I want to thank you for hearing me out. Again, hopefully you got some good value out of this. I'm very grateful for everybody that pays attention, because I really want to help make a difference in people's lives. And this is my way of trying to make this world a better place, despite all the nonsense that's happening right now. We are living in a very strange time, that's for sure. And it's always good to try to keep helping other people and putting smiles on people's faces and helping them achieve their goals. So appreciate you for being with me up until this point, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. All right, take care. Bye-bye.